is inward and not upward. I was listening to the great Les Brown. He was speaking at a training that I was attending. It was a speaker training, and it was probably about 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. We had been in session since 9 o'clock that morning. And I remember him saying something, and he says a lot of things that are memorable. But this one phrase really stuck out to me, and it stayed with me ever since. You may be done with your past, but your past is not done with you. And I didn't fully embrace and understand it, it just stuck. And at that time, I thought I was pretty self evolved. I thought I was pretty well on the personal development track. I thought I had a high level of self awareness. And even though I thought all of these things, there were still blind spots that I was not privy to. And there was enough noise in my life, there was enough activity in my life that I was actually able to avoid looking for the blind spots, which means I was getting blindsided often and not even aware of it. So if I were to connect the dots looking back, Steve Jobs gave that graduation speech and he talks about you can't really understand why you went through what you went through until you look back and you're putting those pieces together because you can see how one thing connects to the other when you look back. You can't really understand it when you're in it. And I remember in my youth, I had two experiences that shaped a big part of my life, my relationships. It was my mother attempting suicide, and she did it twice, and both times it was in front of me. And so I remember having nightmares about finding her. Um, and it's just stuck with me for years. And that then translated into abandonment issues, which I wasn't aware of. And so what I would do is in relationships, I would only allow the woman that I was with to get but so close. And then at some point, I would just cut it off because in my mind, subconsciously, I'm going to leave this situation before something tragic happens. I'm going to leave this situation before you abandon me. Because on a subconscious track, I'm thinking, well, if my own mother would attempt to abandon me permanently, why wouldn't you? You're not as close to me as my mom. You don't love me the way my mom does. And even though I had had a discussion about this in one of my earlier significant relationships when I was fresh out of college, and I remember my girlfriend at the time saying, "Have you ever thought about the baggage and the possibility that you don't let me in because of what you experienced as a child?" I had never thought about it until she brought it up. And at that point, I thought, that makes sense. And because we had one conversation, I thought, oh, problem solved. Like I'm aware of it now. No, like it doesn't, it typically doesn't work that way because we are masters of self deception. And so we will pretend that we are over something. We will pretend and convince ourselves that something doesn't bother us as much as it does, instead of just allowing ourselves to feel whatever we're feeling and being honest and transparent with the people that are close to us, with where we're at and what we're working on. And it may take a lot longer than we thought. And so we have to give ourselves grace and we have to give ourselves patience. And so that phrase, we may be done with our past, but our past is not done with us. Like it's such a powerful thing because all of us have dynamics of being shaped by our childhood experiences. And more often than not, most adults are simply trying to work through whatever they didn't work through when they were a kid. There's no manual for these things in terms of how we grow up and matriculate through life and moving into from adolescence into adulthood. And so there may be something that you're coping with. There may be something that has been tripping you up. There are things that manifest when it comes to some of the hot button topics, right? Relationships, weight and health, and money. Okay, those are the three hot topics. Like, what are three things you never ask somebody? How much they have in the bank, what's going on with their relationship, and how much do they weigh? These are hot buttons. Like people don't, they don't want to talk about it. And if you think about it, like a lot of our blueprint will come from how we grew up, what we saw, what we didn't see, who was around us, who wasn't around us, what we paid heed to, what we didn't pay heed to. And so it took me um, decades, literally decades, to come to a place in my journey where I had my own revelation of saying, you know what? You didn't really deal with that. You never actually talked to someone and worked through those steps of how it shaped you. And I discovered that I created an alter ego in order to cope with those two traumatic events in my youth, and I took that alter ego with me all the way through adulthood. And so it affected my ability to have a close intimate relationship. I never would allow the women that I was with to get too close because I had a fear, an unreasonable fear of abandonment. And the only reason I had that fear was because I never dealt with it. So I didn't even have the fear had me. Okay. And so maybe there's something for you. It could be your blueprint around money. It could be something around success. A lot of people are afraid of being successful. They have this idea that if I level up and I take myself to higher heights, maybe my family won't love me the same, or I don't want to lose the genuine connection I have with my friends or my community, and so they will self-sabotage. Or maybe there's a self-worth, self-esteem and self-image thing that you're dealing with where you don't feel worthy. Why do so many people relegate themselves to jobs where they're overworked and underpaid? Why do so many people accept being mistreated, undervalued, overworked, underappreciated? Because they have deemed themselves and their worthiness only to a certain degree, and then it stops. And so you may ask someone, hey, would you like to earn $250,000 a year? Now, most people would answer immediately, of course I would. Who wouldn't? Well, why don't you? Well, my job doesn't pay that much. Well, why don't you find something that pays you what you feel that you're worth, that you would really like to do? And that's when the excuses will start coming. That's when the soundtrack of why they're not in that situation starts playing in their mind. And I submit to you that there may be some things from your past that you may have glossed over, that you may not have addressed head on. And there are casualties when you don't do the work, ladies and gentlemen. And so my message to you tonight about you may be done with your past, but your past is not done with you. It's really about taking time for you to do the inner work. The climb is inward, not upward. And start focusing on your healing, start focusing on your accountability, and start really getting into those dark cracks and crevices that are the fissures in your foundation that are preventing you from moving up to that next level, from raising your vibrational level, from achieving greater levels of success, because deep down inside, you may not feel worthy. Deep down inside, I had self-worth issues because I thought, well, what's wrong with me if the woman, that's my first love, right? Your mother is your first love, like a father is for his daughter. Why would she not want to stay here for me? Like, what's wrong with me? So asking that question, it's uncomfortable. It's raw. It's I'm being exposed, and I have to grapple with that. I have to look in the accountability mirror and get into the nitty gritty in those places where it's easy to mask and hide. You see, if it's really hard if you're successful, it's really hard if you have talent, it's really hard if people are attracted to you, if people say things like you're a great person and you have great energy, you have a great smile, you're charismatic, you bring so much value. You know, all of us have these things. You're really good at your job. You're really good at your business. You're really good at discipleship and volunteering and pouring into people. And so it's easy for us to mask over all of our stuff because we can just put the focus outward and we can be really good in how we show up for other people. Great mom, great dad, great husband, great wife, great employee, great business owner, great volunteer, great person in the community. We can do all of these things without really taking the time to deal with what's within. Why do you think, why do you think there are so many instances of people who have not only they've taken their own lives and people have said, I never saw it coming. I'm shocked. How many times have you all heard that story? How many times? And from the outside in, the person's like, well, I don't understand. Like they have a great career. They're always up and positive because they were done with their past. So they thought, but their past was not done with them. You cannot escape yourself. You cannot escape your stuff. You can mask it, you can cover it, you can disguise it, but that will only hold for so long. You'll hear about someone in a marriage, and one of them loses their damn minds. And the person that was committed to the end is standing there like, I don't know who this person is. That's not who I married. And they call it a midlife crisis. They call it whatever they want to call it. But one person loses their damn mind and they go and they're never to return again. And the person's like, I don't know who this, I never, because that person that you married didn't deal with their stuff. We are masters of deception and self-deception because we're not taking the time to deal with our stuff. And so I hope that a word, a line, a share from this has sparked something inside of you to get you to take some time to evaluate and look back and connect the dots. Why do people get with other people and these are the wrong people for you to be in relationship with? And then you end up having kids with them. That just makes it worse. Why? Why do people do that? Because you're grasping for something because you haven't dealt with yourself. And so you're putting it on somebody else who is not qualified. And because you can mask these things with intimacy and sex and attraction and chemistry and dopamine hits, you can cover it up for a while, but eventually it blows up in your face. And you have a bunch of single moms and single dads running around here because they didn't take the time to deal with themselves first. And if you have one person that hasn't dealt with themselves, and then you have another person, and you put those two people together, you can only cover that up for so long. You might be very nice people, but if you don't do the work, it's going to blow up in your face. It's inevitable. It's inevitable. It's not that relationships can't work. It's not that more marriages can't hold together. It's just that people are not willing to do the work. They watch too much television. They watch too many romantic comedies and read too many romance novels. They want the fantasy. They want things to happen quick and easy. They want to feel good all the time. They're basing things on their feelings instead of looking at the track of their past and how it impacts and influences their decision making in the present. And when you do that, ladies and gentlemen, you just keep repeating the cycle over and over again because you're living from a soundtrack of yesterday. I was living from a soundtrack of what I saw as a child, which means I am simply repeating that soundtrack over and over again. And even though I believe in the possibility of a brighter future and a great relationship and all of these things, I'm sabotaging those things because I'm stuck on stupid because I didn't do the work. You got to do the work because, again, other people are impacted by this. If you're a parent, you know what I'm talking about. If you're a single parent, you know what I'm talking about because now you're affecting your offspring by your indecision, by your lack of addressing what needs to be addressed. Do the work. It's okay. We're all flawed. Some of us are just better at hiding it than other people. Don't go to social media for instruction on how to deal with your stuff, because no one's going to talk about that. No one's going to post on social media that I was suicidal yesterday, or that I just broke up and I broke up because X, Y, and Z. Let me just tell you what my fault is and all of this, and I messed up. And very few people are doing that on social media. You're not getting the real stuff, you're getting the fake stuff. That's why they call it fake book and not Facebook. But here's the good news: you can change. You can begin to address these things right now, today. You can begin to really connect the dots and then plan a future that is so much brighter. Plan and create a roadmap to a future that is levels above and miles ahead of anywhere you ever thought you could be, anywhere that you thought you could achieve, any level of connection you thought was possible. You can fulfill all those things, but you gotta spend time with you right here. It's lonely. Doing the work is hard. Doing the work is lonely. Doing the work is painful. You're gonna have a lot of days and nights and moments when you just crying your way through doing the work, journaling and writing and assessing. One of the most valuable experiences I had was when I was doing this play, The Exonerated, off Broadway. And it was the true story of prisoners who had been sentenced to death for crimes they didn't commit. And some of these men and women spent 15, 20, 24 years in prison, most of it in solitary confinement, being brutalized in prison for something they didn't do. And playing these parts, I played three of the main characters in this play, and living that every day for years, because it was one of the longest running dramatic plays off Broadway, and then we toured. It changed me. I was dreaming in captivity. If you're an artist, you understand you can't inhabit those types of roles and people without it having an impact on you. And so building relationship with those people during that time, and by the way, it was one of the most important works I've ever done. We raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for them, because there's no restitution if you're wrongfully convicted and then your conviction is overturned through DNA evidence. There's no restoring you. You can commit a crime and come out. They got all kind of programs. But if you didn't commit a crime and you're innocent and you go to prison, they take away 20 years of your life and you come out, there's no programs for you, at least at that time. Maybe there is now. This was back in 2010. I'm sorry, this was back in 2001 through 2004, 2005. So building relationship with those people and seeing how their past was not done with them. They were wanting to adjust to life on the outside. They couldn't do it. They were wanting to adjust to being in a relationship. They couldn't do it because when they went into prison, they were 19, 20 years of age. Now they come out, they're 45 years old. You got a man child with arrested development through no fault of his own. He was done with his past. He did his time. It wasn't even his time to do. He got exonerated. He came out. He built a life. He found a wife, but he didn't know how to do it. He didn't know how to navigate that. And it eventually blew up in his face because he thought he was done with his past, but his past wasn't done with him through no fault of his own. So we all have been subject to some things in our journeys that are no fault of our own. It doesn't exonerate us from doing the work in order to heal and to get as close as we can back to one, being whole, being aligned so that we can truly thrive. So I encourage you to do the work. I encourage you to ask yourself the difficult questions. I encourage you to find someone that you can talk to, that you can work through some of these things with, because you're worth it. You have so much to offer. You have so much to give. Your pain, you can turn that into your purpose. The tests can become your testimonies. All of these things are tools of instruction and inspiration if we so choose to use them as such, so that we can bring value and take our mess and turn it into an empowering message so that we can help someone who needs what we needed at the time, but no one was there to give it to us. But now we can give it to someone else and make up for that gap. So if you got some value out of this message, please share it. Please click like and subscribe. Spread the good news about this YouTube channel, 2% Nation. And I look forward to seeing you on our next installment. Have an awesome and amazing week.